In this video, we'll be learning about variables in Python. The learning goals for this video are for you to be able to write simple programs in Python and to understand how Python uses dynamic typing. Here we have a simple program to print hello in C and in Java. Notice that there's a lot of extra stuff needed beyond just printing, particularly for the Java code. In contrast, Python only requires you to say print hello. This simplicity is part of the reason that Python is a language of choice both for beginners and for experts. One thing to point out is for those of you more familiar with other languages is that Python doesn't use semicolons at the end of statements. That, along with the fact that Python uses indentation of code rather than brackets, will take some getting used to for those of you who are more accustomed to other languages. Alright, next we'll start using some variables. The code on the left likely looks familiar to those of you who know C, C++, or Java, or actually a number of strongly typed languages. What I mean by a strongly typed language is that each variable has a type associated with it. In the code here, we see that both x and y are set to be integers at the time they're declared. Let's now look at the equivalent code in Python. Again, we don't have the same overhead of declaring main or including standard libraries with Python. But we can also notice that because Python is a dynamically typed language, there are no explicit types for x and y. Now, for those who are curious about how this works, realize that although you don't have to say what type of variable is, there are still types behind the scenes with Python. Let's take a quick look at some of these types. Python has a number of common types, and those types are pretty much what you'd expect. We have numeric values, including integers and floats, lists of values, binary bytes, booleans, and strings. We'll be working with a number of these in more detail later this week. But going back to this notion of dynamic typing, if a variable doesn't have a type, how do things work? In the code on the left, what happens if you try to assign an integer variable with a float or a double value? You get an error. But what happens in the Python code in the right when we try to assign x to be 4.5? X is assigned 4.5 with no error. Python is actually totally content with you doing this. Why? Dynamic typing. In our next video, we'll see why this works when we start discussing objects in Python. We'll see you there.